In this video, we're going to be talking about the Auto Align Layers function here inside Pixel Creator Pro. First introduced with Pixel Creator Pro 5. This is a function that should exist in Photoshop, but unfortunately it doesn't, and it's very frustrating, so we just had to create it ourselves. And what it does is it aligns layers. Now you say, well, Photoshop has alignment tools. And technically, you're right, Photoshop does have layer alignment tools. They just don't work the way we need them to work when we're doing album design. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and create more or less a square opening by choosing Add Aperture. And I'm going to duplicate this layer just using Photoshop, and we'll duplicate it again. Okay, so we have three image openings, and if I change the spacing quite dramatically, and we'll stagger them, okay? If I select those three layers, up here in the options bar, we have these layer alignment tools that exist inside Photoshop. So if I want to align those all to the top edge, I click on that button, and all three of those are aligned to the top edge. And over here are our distribution functions, where we can distribute these image openings. So now the spacing between these three boxes is identical, but it's not a certain dimension. And this is where Auto Align Layers comes in. I can select these image openings and choose Auto Align Layers, and I can actually say, hey, I want to do a spacing of exactly 1/4 of an inch, and my spacing is now exactly 1/4 of an inch. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to album design. If you ever look at an album layout, especially spread to spread is important too, but also just the left and right hand side. So many times I see album layouts where the spacing on the left side of the page is ever so slightly different than the spacing on the right hand side of the page, and I come from an architectural background, so dimensions and spacing is very important to me. So when I'm doing an album layout, I like to use a similar spacing throughout the entire album. But certainly, if I'm using spacing between images, I certainly want the spacing be the same on the left and the right, most generally. Sometimes not so, but if it's close and it looks slightly off, it really distracts me. So the Auto Align Layers, its primary function was to be able to specify the exact spacing between layers, and it works both horizontally and vertically as well. So for example, if I have it staggered this way, and I select the layers and choose Auto Align Layers, and I specify the spacing to be vertical, and I hit Process, then it's going to go ahead and align those vertically. The spacing is exactly 1/4 of an inch. It kept the staggeredness because I didn't choose the option. If I go back into Auto Align Layers and I do the layer alignment to the left and then go ahead and process, then of course it's going to line those all up, and the spacing between vertically is going to be 1/4 of an inch. Now there is another thing that is really exciting about the Auto Align Layers, and that is when I insert an image. I'm just going to insert an image using the Insert Photo tool here in Pixel Creator Pro into the middle image opening. Now these image openings are more or less square, but the image that I'm inserting is not square. It's portrait. So part of the image extends beyond the image opening itself. So now when I select these three squares and choose the alignment tools in Photoshop to align to the top edge, notice that the middle square is not aligned to the top edge of the other two. And that's because when Photoshop does layer alignment, I don't know why, but it is what it is. When it aligns layers, it's aligning the layers based on the content of the layer. So you can see this middle image opening, the image itself, the top edge of the image is aligned to the top edge of the other two squares. But for album design purposes, that's not what we're going to want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and select these layers again and choose Auto Align Layers. And just for the first example, we're not going to do any spacing. We're just going to align to the top edge and hit Process. And Pixel Creator Pro treats the image openings in the proper way that we need for album design, and that is based on the layer mask. So now you can see these layers are in fact aligned to the top edge of each one based on the layer mask. And likewise, if I were to select those three layers and choose Auto Align Layers again, We're going to add the spacing element to it. So when I choose process, it will align the layers. And now that we have exactly a 1/4 inch spacing and everything is aligned perfectly like we would expect it to be. So you'll find that that auto align layers option is really a very good function. Very nice addition to Photoshop. And not to toot our own horn too much, but the auto align layer option also works with shape layers. So if I were to do the same thing with our shape layer, something like this, you can see we have 3 different size shapes. I could select our shape layers and choose auto align layers, and we'll go ahead and leave the spacing at a 1/4 inch with the top edge alignment, and it will align shape layers as well. So they're all aligned to the top edge and all with a 1/4 inch spacing in between those layers. So that auto align layers function here in the new Pixel Creator Pro, I think you'll find it's a really great addition and get a lot of use out of that function when you're doing your album design layouts.